I walked quietly into the house, holding a paper grocery bag in one hand and a bottle of Pinot Noir in the other. Each step was cautious, and the silence was enhanced by the barely perceptible creak of the floor beneath me. I felt oddly satisfied. The parent-teacher conference at school had ended earlier than expected, and now I was going to surprise Jessica with her favorite dinner and wine. We both needed it. Jessica is 35, working in marketing, and her schedule is getting busier and busier, as is our life in general. I'm 37, a history teacher, and after a long day at school, there's little energy left for a night out. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Dinner, light conversation, maybe finish the movie we started a few weeks ago but never finished. This simplicity of a routine evening was something comforting. However, the house was frighteningly quiet. Jessica usually turned on music on her phone while cooking dinner or folding laundry. Sometimes it was energetic tunes, sometimes it was podcasts about Portland's urban legends. But today was different. I set the bag on the kitchen table, listening for the slightest sound. But nothing. Jessica? I called out, not wanting to break the strange silence. There was no response. The kitchen was sparkling clean, even a little too clean. I headed out into the hallway, clutching the bottle tighter. Our photos flashed by, smiling faces on vacation, carefree moments. As I climbed the stairs, a faint light from our bedroom caught my attention. The door was ajar and a warm beam of light crossed the dark hallway. And that's when I heard it. A laugh. Her laugh that I would have recognized unmistakably from 1,000. But there was something different about it. It sounded different, lighter, softer, even flirtatious. My steps slowed, my heart beat faster. Then a voice came, deep, masculine, careless. I froze at the door, tension gripping my whole body. Through the narrow slit I saw her. Jessica was lying on the bed, legs stretched out, her back resting on the pillows. She was wearing the same lilac robe I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. It slid slightly off her shoulder, creating an image that seemed to be deliberate. In front of her, on the pillow, was a cell phone. The camera was pointed at her. She hadn't noticed me. Sure, this weekend, she said, her voice sounding quiet and playful. I'd love to. She smiled, a genuine, carefree smile I hadn't seen in a long time. A smile I thought she was saving for me. The man's voice sounded again. I couldn't hear the words, but the tone was eloquent enough. So long, sweetheart, he said. It was like everything around me collapsed. I gripped the bottle tighter, the coldness of the glass creeping through my palm. My chest felt tight, as if the air had suddenly disappeared. I took a step back and accidentally hit the door. It creaked open. Jessica's head turned sharply. Her eyes widened, meeting mine. In an instant, her face changed from relaxed to panicked. Tony, she mumbled, frantically grabbing the phone. Her fingers trembled as she tried to end the call. I stood still, petrified, watching her. The silence had become unbearable. Jessica sat motionless, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Her cheeks were flushed, her face flashed with both guilt and stubbornness. Tony, I can explain, she began, her voice shaky but protective. I stayed silent, leaning against the door jamb and crossing my arms. Let the weight of the moment weigh on her. Her gaze darted between the phone and me. It's not what you think, she added hastily. The banality of those words hung in the tense air. Not what I think. My voice was low, almost calm, though the blood was pounding in my temples. You're lying in our bed, calling another man honey, and making plans for the weekend. So this, Jessica, enlighten me, what exactly am I supposed to be thinking? She opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Her face turned pale. He's just a friend, she finally said. The words sounded as if she'd prepared them in advance. A friend? I asked, disbelief in my voice. Since when do friends get to hear that flirtatious laugh or make appointments while you're sitting in our bedroom like that? I pointed to the robe barely hanging from her shoulders. Her jaw tensed, a flicker of either desperation or defiance in her eyes. You don't understand anything, she muttered. You're right, I shouted, snapping out of it. I don't understand anything. She took a deep breath, straightened up, and continued. Tony, you've become so distant. Always at work, always tired. It's like you don't exist at home. I feel invisible. Invisible. That word hit me like a slap in the face. And your solution to the situation is what? Let a double life? Is that how you deal with feeling invisible? It's all random, it's not what you think. It was just a conversation, she shouted back, her voice shaking with tension. I stood watching Jessica, feeling dizzy with emotion. There was a deafening silence in the room, punctuated only by the faint buzzing of her phone, which she continued to clutch as if it were her last chance. And now what? I asked coldly. What was this, just a conversation, that had gotten this far. She didn't answer right away, her fingers nervously clutching the phone. "I don't know," she finally exhaled. Her voice sounded quiet, almost a whisper. "I don't know what it is anymore." A bitter laugh escaped my throat as I took a step back. "You don't know? That's, reassuring." Jessica stood up abruptly, her movements quick and erratic. "Tony, please," she pleaded, panic breaking through her voice. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just, lonely." "Lonely?" I interrupted, my voice ringing with anger. "And you think that justifies everything? Are you really going to blame it on me?" Without waiting for an answer, I turned around and headed for the door. Footsteps rumbled on the stairs as she called out to me. But I didn't even turn around. That night, I ended up at Aiden's house, my best friend since college. He opened the door, saw my face, and let me in without a word. I told him everything: the phone call, Jessica's excuses, her words. He listened in silence, his jaw clenched tighter as I spoke. "Shit," he exhaled when I was done. "I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say," I mumbled, sinking down onto his couch. "I don't know what to do." Aiden sat across from me, resting his elbows on his knees. "What do you want to do, Tony?" he asked. "Because you need to be clear. You can't let her twist this whole thing in your favor." I thought about it for a moment and then suddenly I said, "I want to hear the whole truth from her. No excuses." Aiden nodded, looking at me seriously. "Okay. But don't let her manipulate you. You deserve to know what's really going on, no matter how unpleasant it turns out to be." I stayed with Aiden for the night. The thought of going home was unbearable. As I headed back in the morning, I felt the weight of the conversation ahead of me, like the whole world was pressing down on my shoulders. When I entered the house, Jessica was standing in the kitchen stirring her coffee. She looked like nothing had happened. When she saw me, she set the cup on the table. "Tony," she began softly, "we need to talk." I crossed my arms, leaning on the countertop. "That depends on whether you're finally going to tell me the truth." Her face flushed and she looked away. "I've already said everything. It's not what it looks like." "Stop lying," I cut her off, trying to keep my voice firm. "I deserve better than that, Jessica. If you want to make a fool of me, this conversation is over." She was silent for a moment, staring at the floor, and then she took a deep breath. Her eyes glistened with tears as she looked up at me. "You're right," she whispered. "I didn't tell you everything." Her words hit like a tsunami. "Then start talking," I said, my voice trailing off, but I held it together. Jessica clutched the edge of the tabletop as if trying to find a foothold. "It started a few months ago," she admitted. "At first it was just socializing. We met at a conference in Seattle, one of those marketing events. He was charming, easy to talk to. I didn't think it meant anything." "Seattle?" I interrupted, memories of the weekend she told me she was working late. She nodded, guilt flashing across her face. "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd be worried. I convinced myself it didn't matter. But then we started texting. It was innocent, honestly. It was nice to have someone notice me." "And then?" I asked coldly. "When did it stop being innocent?" Jessica lowered her eyes. "I don't know. Maybe when I started looking forward to his messages more than yours. Or when I made excuses to see him. Just happened." "Happened?" I grinned sarcastically. "Did you accidentally book a hotel room? Or accidentally called him, honey? Don't try to make it look like a mistake." Jessica snickered, her shoulders slumped and her voice became almost inaudible. "I'm not apologizing. I just want you to understand how it came to this. I felt unwanted." "Unwanted?" I laughed bitterly. "I don't understand why you blame me? That we have money? That we have a normal life?" "No," she cried out. "I'm not blaming you. I'm just trying to explain." Her words hung in the air, heavy and strangled. "Who is he?" I finally asked. Her eyes widened and she took a step back. "Who is he?" I repeated firmly. "His name is Mark," she said after a pause. "He's married to." We weren't going to get that far. Suddenly the doorbell rang. The sound cut through the tension. Jessica turned pale. "Tony, don't open the door," she blurted out. But I was already at the door. There was a man in his 30s, tall, with a confident posture. "Tony, I presume?" His voice was calm, almost friendly. "Who are you?" I asked, feeling the anger boiling up inside me. "Mark?" He introduced himself like it was dinner with friends. It was like the world had turned upside down. I turned slowly to Jessica, but she stood motionless, her face as white as chalk. "Jessica," I said coldly, trying to hold back the storm of emotion. "Do you want to explain?" She was silent, her eyes darting about like a man cornered. Mark, on the other hand, behaved with an excessive calm. He stepped forward, crossing the threshold as if it were his home. "I think it's time to clear the air," he said with a cocky, defiant smile. I felt the anger inside me boil over. The situation was so absurd that it seemed surreal, like a bad dream from which it was impossible to wake up. "Oh, so you're on the same page with her?" I asked, gritting my teeth. "Do you really think that coming into my house and playing the middleman is going to fix anything?" Jessica, as if snapping out of a daze, stepped toward Mark. Her gestures were hurried, almost panicked, and her voice trembled. "Mark, please," she pleaded, holding out her hands to him. "This isn't going to help." "Really?" He grinned, raising an eyebrow. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like Tony doesn't know the whole story yet." I tensed, feeling the anger boiling in my chest. "What, whole story?" I asked angrily. Mark shifted his gaze to me, his face contorted into a smug smile. "Did she tell you about the baby?" Time stopped. Jessica gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Mark," she hissed with panic in her voice. I stared at her, feeling my heart racing. "The baby?" I whispered, barely realizing my own words. Mark, leaning against the door jamb, smirked. "That's right. Jessica's pregnant. And it's my baby." The air rushed out of my lungs like I'd been punched in the stomach. My chest constricted and my eyes blurred. "Jessica," I said, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. "Is it true?" She stepped toward me, her eyes filling with tears. "Tony, I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how." "You didn't know how?" My voice got louder. "Did you think it would be better if I found out from him?" I pointed at Mark, who was watching everything like a spectator of a cheap show. "Tony, I'm sorry," Jessica sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Shut up and stop saying that," I shouted, hitting the joint. "It didn't just happen, Jessica. You chose this. You chose to betray and mix me with dirt." Mark whistled softly. "Well, this is getting hot. Maybe I should." "Get out of here, you bastard," I interrupted sharply, rage boiling inside me. "No." He raised his hands in surrender, grinning. Okay. It doesn't have to get to the point of violence." He walked out but turned around with a smug smile and threw, "Call me later, darling." I slammed the door shut, the sound echoing through the house. Turning around to face Jessica, I felt my hands shaking. "How long has this been going on?" I asked coldly. She wiped away the tears that left wet marks on her face. "What? How long have you been lying to me? How long has this been going on?" Jessica slumped her shoulders, as if the weight of the confession had become unbearable. "Almost a year," she whispered. It was as if the world around her was beginning to crumble. "A year?" I asked her again, feeling something inside me tearing. "You've been leading a double life for a year?" "It's not what you think," she began, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't?" I laughed sarcastically. "You ruined everything, our marriage, our trust. And now you say you didn't mean to?" She covered her face with her hands, her sobs growing louder. I turned away. The woman in front of me was a stranger. Without another word, I walked out the door, her cries still sounding behind me. The cold Portland air burned my skin, but it didn't calm me. I just got in my car and drove wherever the hell I was going. The streets of the city flashed before my eyes, the light of the street lamps blurring the windshield as memories came back to me. Her late-night excuses, the cold stares, the lies I'd once believed. I stopped only at Aiden's house. The porch light was on and he was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. His dog was snoozing peacefully at his feet. I knocked softly, but he immediately opened the door, noticing me. "Tony," he said, seeing my face. "What's wrong?" I collapsed onto the couch and stared at the floor, my hands shaking. "She's pregnant," I finally said. Aiden froze. "What you said?" "And it's not my baby," I added, my voice muffled. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Shit. This is way out of line." I nodded, feeling devastated. "Her lover, Mark. He came to the house to tell me." Aiden blinked, not believing his ears. "He came? What's wrong with him?" "I don't know," I answered. "I don't want to know. I can't do this anymore, Aiden. I'm done." We sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the ceiling fan whirring. "You need to protect yourself," he said finally. "Whatever happens next, don't let her turn things upside down." The next day I began the divorce process. My lawyer acted decisively, using all the evidence, letters, texts, a recording of their conversation. I wanted nothing more than freedom. Surprisingly, Jessica didn't fight back. Perhaps she was overcome by guilt. She signed the papers without objection. Afterward, all she wrote me was, "I'm sorry." I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope you find happiness. I didn't reply. The message went unread until I finally deleted it. It wasn't closure, but it was the best I could get. In the weeks that followed, I moved into a small apartment in northeast Portland. The modest dwelling seemed alien after the house we shared. But it was my space. Work became my sanctuary. I immersed myself in lesson planning, school projects that brought a sense of stability. Aiden continued to drag me out of the house for a beer or a basketball game when he saw me getting too wrapped up in myself. Life moved on. You're doing well, Aiden said one night as we sat on the patio of a local bar. Better than I expected, to be honest. Thanks, I guess, I replied, slowly swirling the amber liquid in my glass. Aiden leaned back in his chair, staring at me intently. You don't carry that anymore. The anger, the weight of everything she'd done. It no longer hangs over you the way it used to. I hesitated, realizing he was right. The wounds Jessica had left behind were still there, but they no longer devoured me from the inside out. They were scars now, painful but evidence that I had survived. After a few months, life found a new rhythm. I started decorating my apartment, turning it into a place that felt like home. I resumed old hobbies, photography, hiking, even cooking. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. Their support reminded me that my life goes on despite what I had lost. One evening, I was sitting at my desk checking my students' papers when there was a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I saw a woman. She looked a little over 30. Light blue eyes, a friendly smile. She nervously tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. Hi, she said. You don't know me, but I'm Claire. Mark's wife. Her name hit me like an electric shock and I gripped the door jamb tighter. What do you want? She hesitated, lowering her gaze to the floor, but then met my gaze again. I found out about everything. About you, about Jessica, about Mark, about the baby. I walked away from him. I'm out of breath. Why are you here? I thought you deserved to know, she said quietly. And I wanted to apologize. For everything he did. For what you've been through. I know it won't make it up to you, but, I stood there not knowing what to say. I've been where you are, she continued, her voice calm but emotion in it. And I know what it's like to feel alone. If you ever want to talk, I'm here for you. Her offer surprised me. It was the last thing I expected, and for a moment I considered just closing the door. But there was something sincere, vulnerable in her gaze that made me change my mind. Come on in, I said, stepping aside. We talked for hours that night, sharing stories over cups of coffee. Her experience was much like mine. Lies, betrayal, the slow erosion of trust. Her presence became a strange comfort, a reminder that I was not alone in this chaos. Claire didn't become a permanent part of my life, but her visit was a turning point. It reminded me that healing is not about forgetting but moving forward. It's finding meaning in the wreckage of the past. A year later, I stood on the balcony of my apartment watching the sunset over the Portland skyline. The air was cool with the scent of pine trees. My life wasn't perfect, but it belonged to me again. Jessica had become a distant memory, a chapter that was finally closed. I learned to let go. Not just her, but anger, regrets, and what-if thoughts. For the first time in years, the future felt like a blank canvas waiting for me to decide what to paint on it. And I was ready. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.